Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Tech Stack. Today we're joined by Ted Harrington, who's executive partner at Independent Security Evaluators. Also, #1 best-selling author on the book Hackable. Ted, hey.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for having me. This will be fun.
Good to have you here. We've also got my colleague at TechFellow, Tom Paffett, joining us. Tom, hello.
Hello.
Ted, tell us a little bit about your company, please. We're going to talk about ethical hacking in this podcast, and I know we've got things to talk about around the phrase hacking as well, but it'd be good to hear a bit about the firm and yourself, how you got into this world.
Yeah, sure. So our company, ISEE, stands for Independent Security Evaluators. Basically, companies come to us when they're struggling to understand how their systems might have security vulnerabilities. They're looking for help to find those vulnerabilities, understand how severe they are, and then ultimately they want to be able to fix the vulnerabilities so that they can in fact turn around and prove the improvements to their security to whoever it is they're trying to prove it to. Like if they're trying to, sell to enterprise customers, they want to be able to send that off, or if they just want to prove it to their boss or the board or whoever. But that's essentially the way that we help companies. We help them solve those challenges where they're like, look, I don't know how someone's going to attack this system. And then once we find the issues, I don't know how to fix it. So that's basically what we do. We've been doing it for a pretty long time. Yeah, I think the things that I learned out of that experience over the many years of doing this are all in the book that you mentioned, Hackable. I mean, that's like, it's a book of stories of the crazy stuff that I've seen and what to do about it.
It's an interesting thing, isn't it? I guess, can we say you've hacked into a lot of companies, which many people might think, hold on, why has this bloke not been arrested? But then we have this term ethical hacking. So you've explained why someone would use you guys, use your firm for this reason. But is there still a bit of a misconception over this, of why this needs to be something that exists?
That's a good way to ask the question, because I mean, I see the world obviously through my own experience, my own lens. And so to me, it's like, well, no, there's no question about why this exists. And when I look at our customers and even our prospective customers, even companies who haven't hired us or have chosen specifically not to hire us, they all, I think, understand the purpose of ethical hacking. When you go further outside of technology and maybe think about more in the mainstream of the world, then there might be people who don't fully understand it. And I think that there's, even within technology, there's people who don't understand hacker, right? They don't understand that term and what it means. And it's often, abused to mean a bad thing, and it actually isn't one. But so to answer your question briefly, I think the closer people are to the need, the less they misunderstand it. But there is still rampant misunderstanding.
So you said there the word hacker actually maybe gets misused or could be a bit negative. This isn't going to something we're going to solve overnight, but is there a different word, a different concept that maybe needs to be adopted or is already coming out in the mainstream?
That's a good question too. And there's a lot of people in security that are debating that as a proposal, right? Where it's the term hacker has a certain definition, but it's being used in inappropriate ways many times. And so a lot of people are thinking, well, maybe is the solution to just like concede that problem and say, fine, hacker can be a bad thing, and then this other thing over here is a good thing. I don't know if I have a fully formed opinion on whether we should come up with a new term or not yet, but maybe what's helpful for your audience is to really break apart the problem and understand kind of what a hacker is. And so the media has really taken hacker to mean, this evil doing person, right? Someone who performs some sort of action in order to achieve some sort of malicious outcome. But really, in reality, what a hacker is a hacker is somebody who looks at the system and says, I know it's supposed to do X, but can it do Y? Like, can I repurpose the system? Can I make it do something it wasn't intended to do? And ultimately, I mean, that's like all hacking is like, I'm building things and I'm exploring and I'm problem solving and I'm seeing, can I like make other things happen with it? But there's another fork to the road, which is you want to see, does the system perform differently than it's supposed to? And then can we do something about that? Can we fix it, or can we make it do something even better and bigger and more beautiful? And for that reason, for the reason that there's this sort of confusion about is hacker good or not good, the term ethical has been adopted to go in front of hacker for the people who do good, which is the side of the world that I come from. And on a sort of intellectual level, I don't like that. I reject that because, you don't like hacker is just, it's a neutral term. It's not good or bad. It's like saying, you wouldn't say ethical plumber, right? A plumber is a plumber. They're not, it's not inherently good or inherently bad. Some are good.
Some are inherently bad.
Some are inherently bad, but the term itself isn't inherently bad. But so while I intellectually reject the need for ethical in front of the word hacker, I also understand it. And I'm a believer in communication. I wrote a book, so I certainly value effective communication. And so if we need to attach this word ethical to the word hacker in order to make it abundantly clear this is a good person doing a good thing, then I guess I'm willing to accept that.
It raises quite an interesting point. I'm going to ask Tom to come in here because, as you say, there's not always a malicious intent. And Tom alerted me to, I guess it's a bit of an ongoing thing, Tom, isn't it? I'll hand over to you with the hacking of car key fobs, which we know has happened in the past anyway.
Yeah, it was an article. A number of drivers were locked out of their cars when their key fobs mysteriously started failing. They wouldn't work, they wouldn't open, they wouldn't close, they wouldn't do anything in a car park.
It was a huge supermarket, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a Tesco superstore. It was one of the really big ones. And obviously people sort of thought, well, what's going on here? They contacted the police thinking there might be something bad going on. But police couldn't find any ill intent. And then a couple of days later, Ford brought out a sort of statement that said, we're looking into this, we're sort of interested in what's going on and why it was happening to mainly Ford vehicles, it seems. And so obviously that's where we start seeing things go awry. And obviously, as you say, hacking isn't inherently bad. It's just making something do something different to what it's meant to do.
Well, yeah, it probably is bad. Making fobs not work.
It probably
is bad.
I guess in this situation, though, where, as Tom said, there's so far been no ill intent, but it's raised a problem to the man on the street that anything can be hackable, even something as simple as your car, your key fob. And does that raise concerns, if we use this just as an example here, with an area of technology which is advancing so quickly? Cars are connected to mobile devices much more. We've got companies working towards fully autonomous driving. Is there a concern for companies, governments and individuals about the security risks with systems like this?
Yes. I mean, you're talking about, passenger safety, no doubt about it. If you think about what's the worst case scenario of any particular security incident, the worst case scenario would be loss of life. But that answer, the way I just answered it, it feels extreme saying that. I'm the security guy who really tries to avoid the sort of fear and uncertainty and doubt that everyone in security really leans on. Like, there's a hack happening every minute. All this stupid, fear mongering that happens. And I like to try to think about it more in terms of the reality of what do we need to be thinking about? Why does that matter? So if you're thinking about a car maker who is discovering that there are potentially issues with whether it's the fob or the mobile app or the way that certain elements of the onboard software is operating, we don't need to jump right to the everyone's going to die because that can be alienating for some people who, first of all, don't believe that. And also it can, make the whole security profession almost feel like we're all these crazy paranoid people. And instead what we should be thinking about is, well, what matters to the business? And then work backwards from what matters to the business into what do we need to do about it? So if the business cares about things like brand reputation, or they care about maybe the the proprietary software that could potentially be reverse engineered in one of these systems, or they care about the performance of the vehicle. Like whatever it is they care about, that's where companies need to start. Say, I care about blank, and you work backwards from what you care about to figure out where you're going to invest time, effort, and money, because it's not a blanket answer. It's not, yes, everything is, can be exploited, so we should worry about everything. It's, what do you care about? What does your company care about? And then work from there.
Are you finding in your experience and maybe just thinking about cybersecurity in general and across multiple industries, and I'm aware I'm going to be very broad here, is it a subject which those people are taking seriously enough? Those questions that you said need to be asked, are they being asked by enough firms?
So I think you need to we all need to segment the world into the different sort of, attitudes. Like we can segment companies, I think, based on attitude. And the companies who are the more progressive companies, they're the ones who are really driving advancement in terms of whether that's at an industry level or within the particular corner of technology they focus on. The ones who are like, we are defined by getting better. Within that group of companies, the emphasis on security is you can see it across that group. They are realizing that, hey, security is not just the right thing to do, but it also helps us support our corporate objectives, like whatever our mission is. And the distinction that I'm drawing is that not all companies actually are in that group. And that might sound provocative and maybe even a little inflammatory, and I'm not meaning to like pick fights or point fingers or insult anybody, but the fundamental truth is there are companies out there who see security as a cost, as a tax, and they want to minimize it. And they see it not as something that is a reflection of their core values. It's not a reflection of the drive to get better. And maybe at their company, they don't even necessarily care that much about getting better. They care more about other things. And that is a major difference. So of the companies who are defined by sort of excellence and the pursuit of getting better, many of those companies are doing security well. And almost all of the companies who are not defined by that attitude, they are not doing security properly.
I guess then you can almost start to feel a bit sorry for those who could be a victim of crime, maybe completely unwillingly, because they haven't ranked cybersecurity as high as maybe they should. Maybe they just haven't thought that they would be a target, but then someone just decides I'm going to have a bit of fun here. That would be quite a hard lesson to learn, and maybe a bit late. So is the answer here to educate more people from a business perspective about the technology benefits?
That's the campaign that I'm on. Yes, because you're right. Learning through an adverse experience is powerful and painful. But what we can start doing for companies who maybe haven't necessarily prioritized it yet is, instead of saying like, here's this big scary thing and you better invest some money in it, and it's this big scary thing and it hasn't impacted you, but trust me, it will impact, like that. I don't know, who's going to receive that information well? No one's going to be excited about that. But if instead we can say, here's an opportunity, right? Security is the right thing to do. You should be doing it anyway. Security is going to help avoid and reduce bad things from happening. Also true. But those two things don't necessarily motivate the companies who are already not doing them. And so that's where this case comes from that I'm making, and certainly is one of the core arguments in my book, that security, not only are you going to get those couple of amazing things, if you do it right, you're also going to get a competitive advantage. And how I sort of arrived at that is I looked at our customers and I said, well, here are some of the most prominent technology pioneers in the world. Why do they pay us? And they every single one of our customers, 100% of our customers, they also believe that security is the right thing to do. And they want to, of course, avoid bad things. That's why that's a big reason why they're doing this. But they're trying to gain a competitive advantage. They're recognizing that their stakeholders, their customers or whoever, those companies care about security. And so they're saying, well, if I can be defined by security, and already my sort of core values are defined by excellence anyway, if I can manifest that core value through security and it makes me better and different from my competitor, I'm going to close more sales. I'm going to close them faster. I'm going to close bigger sales. And that's really compelling for companies who are like, I guess I don't see the point of security yet because I haven't been hacked yet. If all of a sudden you're like, well, here's this opportunity to gain a competitive advantage. Now they're listening.
So these are some of the themes that you're looking at in your book, and about educating people in a simplified way rather than someone who's head down in security 24/7.
My book really does several things, but the two big pieces to it are it teaches you how to actually secure a software system, like how to actually think about it right by rejecting the misconceptions and the mistaken norms. And then once you've done that, how to convert it into that competitive advantage. And one of the things that's kind of interesting about the writing journey is thinking about how do you best serve your audience. And when I initially was thinking about the book idea, the motivation was really only the first part. The motivation was really, I want to help people build better, more secure software systems. But I found that in order to really serve the audience, it would be incomplete without the second piece, which is, okay, now how do you convert that into business benefit? But really the engine room of this book is teaching organizations how to better secure software systems.
I must admit, one of the points you made in your book on the variations on black box and white box testing sort of brought that in as well. The fact that companies have to be open with their information in order to get the best out of the testing and out of the security side of things. And I think basically it's coming down to proving that security can be frictionless, isn't it? It's not going to impact, it's not going to drag the company. If anything, it's going to accelerate everything you can do within that company because it should act like it's never there.
In a utopian world, I think we could say that security is frictionless, but I'd be naive if I felt that was actually ever going to be true. So no, I think that I can't go so far as to promise that security be frictionless, but what it can be, which is really what you're asking, is security can be way easier than people A, think about it, and B, approach it right now. So like, for example, okay, so we're sitting here, and in addition to my glass of scotch, which I'm drinking, I am also drinking.
Aren't we all?
Oh yeah, I mean, like, come on, we're having a good time here. I'm also drinking.
It's Friday when we're recording this, so it's got to be done.
Yeah, I mean, why would we not? So in addition to that, I'm also drinking this smoothie that I made that has, like all these. There's spinach in here and cashew butter and water and pea protein and like all kinds of healthy stuff. And when I make the blender or when I make the smoothie and I pour it out, I have two things I can do. I have two ways to clean the blender. I can clean it right away or I can clean it later. And this is, I think, a really interesting metaphor for the idea of when do you think about security? Just like when do you think about cleaning the blender? And this struck me one day after a workout and I'm like, that's kind of like security. So you've got this blender. You can do one of two things. I can clean it now. But the truth is, most mornings I got all these urgent other things I got to go do. So I just leave it sitting in the sink. When I come back later in the evening and now I have to like do this dish, it's kind of a pain in the butt, right? I've got to soak it for a while because everything's all hardened. Then once it's done soaking, I have to completely disassemble it, scrub every piece, and then let it, dry it, reassemble it, all that stuff. And so that's kind of what it's like when people think about security later. Right? It's they often say, well, let's build the thing and then we'll approach security later. But what winds up happening is it's a lot of work because the issues that you find later, you are much harder to deal with than if you just did it in the moment. So if instead of just putting the blender in the sink, I just put a drop of soap in the blender, a little bit of water, and then ran the blender for like 10 seconds, the thing literally cleans itself. And that's what it's like when you think about security along the way. Like, yes, you are going to have to take a step. Like I had to go put that drop of soap in and I had to do it right now. And I had to say, look, I need to give myself 20 seconds to do this because otherwise it's going to take me 20 minutes later. You have to take that step. But if you do that, you have this enormous saving of effort and time and all the costs that are associated with that. And that's what people really should be thinking about when it comes to security is that do it earlier and it makes your life so much easier. It's not hard to do. It's easy to build in. So it's not like completely frictionless. Like I did have to take that step and I did have to do it right now. But how easy was that? Like that was so much easier than doing it the hard way, which is delay it.
I got to be honest, I'm a little bit worried that the takeaway from this will be that you're drinking a scotch and on the side some sort of weird smoothie.
Well, I didn't mix them together.
I should hope so.
Idea though.
What, just to give you even more of a kick before the workout?
Yeah.
Exactly.
No, it's an interesting point, and you are, you're absolutely right, and that expands to just beyond cybersecurity as well, doesn't it? If you're at the early stages of starting a firm, to have a roadmap of where your technology is going, we know it changes quickly, but to have an idea about where you want that path to end up, or certain tools you're going to bring in, it's going to give you a bit of a head start. And make life a lot easier, which I guess is your point there.
Yeah, I mean, that it's so many people think about security as if it's harder and makes your life worse. And in fact, if we just approach it a little bit differently, it can be easier. It can be very easy. And in fact, it can be actually less expensive than doing it the hard way. And there's a part in my book when I mentioned that. I'm like, if you do it this way, it'll be easier and less expensive. And then I even acknowledged, like, wait, did that just sound too good to be true? Like, you can get the better outcome for the better price. This is one of those rare times in life when the better outcome is the better price if you just do it a certain way.
Your book, for me, who is not a cybersecurity expert, I have Tom is presenting it for our audience, who Tom cannot see you, by the way. For me, who's not a cybersecurity expert, I've got an understanding of these concepts, but it's not completely my world. But straight away when I was reading it, it was broken down in a really, really simple way. The grammar was really nice to soak in. So I'm interested to know who the book is targeted at, because I'm going to continue reading my way through it. I'm sure it'll be educational. But if you're at a stage further ahead than me, if you're in the industry already, if you're a techie guy, is this still going to resonate with these people?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that you as a self-described, not security expert can digest it, that's like the greatest sense of accomplishment I could have, because I was thinking, how can I describe this simply? I mean, I literally wrote it as if I was describing it to my 12-year-old nephew, who is a really sharp, really inquisitive, just awesome human being, but he's not a security expert. And so each idea, as I was writing it, that was sort of my guiding North Star, was to say, would he understand this idea? And that's why I define the terms and avoid jargon and really keep it simple. But fundamental, so that's a comment more about the actual writing style, the prose, which is how you were able to understand it. But who it's written for is actually people that are directly responsible for this problem. And in some cases, that's a security professional. In some cases, it's more of a developer. And in some cases, it's an executive who's a technology leader, but security is not even their whole job. And so I wrote, it's the exact advice. This book was like the hand guide that we give our customers. Those people who say, hey, we need some help with ethical hacking. Help us find our problems. Help us fix them. That's what this book is. And that's really who it's for.
How did you start the process as well? Was it something you've been working on for a long time, or did it kind of click overnight and you thought, I've got to get this down on the page?
Well, I've known for a while that I had a book in me, but the moment that sort of the lightning strike was there were two things that happened. The first thing was I noticed that I kept having the same conversations over and over again with our existing customers or prospective customers or people out at industry events. Like after maybe I gave a keynote at a conference, people would come up and ask me, these same 10 questions about these same 10 problems. And once I noticed that, they didn't all necessarily describe them the same way, but when my head, once I organized them into these sort of 10 areas, I thought that was interesting. And so then the second thing was the lightning bolt, really, that sort of struck me to say, you have to write this. And that was when I started evaluating, well, what are the common solutions to those 10 common problems. And I realized that the way that most people talk about the sort of the conventional approaches to these problems were pretty universally backwards. And I reject that. I couldn't, with all the experience and knowledge that I'd accumulated, and I couldn't let that exist. I mean, think about what that means. That means that you've got somebody who is building some sort of software system, and they're going to make their mark. They're going to change their industry or the world, like whatever the scope of their vision is. They're innovating in ways that are going to make a real impact. They recognize that in the process of doing that, security is going to be a challenge. And then they realize they have some problems about how to actually approach security. So they go out and try to solve those problems, and the solutions aren't right. And I'm like, I empathize with that, and I can't allow that to exist. So that's why I wrote the book that addresses those common problems. It calls out the misconceptions that I see and replaces them with, hey, don't think that, it's this instead. And then it tells them exactly what to do. And so that was really the impetus to it. It was this, I'd been sort of accumulating experience, and then I noticed that the world really needed this type of advice. And so I had to do it. It was a mission.
It sounds like the sort of thing that would be perfect to put in front of someone who's starting out a degree right up to, I know you say to CEO level, but some of those earlier levels, if you're a junior cybersecurity guy, to start to question some of the themes and some of the ideas coming out from your seniors, and not in an arrogant way, just in a good way, that would be very, very valuable, because as you rightly say, these guys who are going to leave their mark could have a quite a nasty or negative, I should say, impact on a future generation of technologists. And then you find a problem is never being solved, and it's way far too down the line than it should have been.
Well, I'll tell you what, if I were to hear of an example of someone going to their superior's office and throw down a copy of Hackable and say, here's
That's
why we have to do it this way. Oh my God, I would like, I don't know what I would do, but I'd be very happy. And
you'll have made it. That'll be life complete.
Yeah, that would be incredible. But I think one thing that is worth pointing out here is that when I talk about this idea that, the common or conventional approaches are backwards, or people maybe should do it differently, I'm not meaning to say that people are out there being ignorant or malicious or stupid or anything that's not positive. It's more that a lot of people actually don't realize the difference of what's going on. And that was one of the things I really struggled with in writing this book, is how do I make it so that the person who doesn't realize they're doing it, that they're not doing it the right way, how do I help how do I help change that person's mind? And that's a much more productive and collaborative conversation, because it's not like you're stupid, you're wrong. It's, hey, a lot of people think this, but it really should be this, and here's why. And so in that regard, I think that anyone who reads this, as you mentioned, whether you're starting out or you're much farther along in your career, it's going to help, because it thinks in terms of ideas and how to think differently about those ideas.
Yeah, well, look, I mean, all the best with it. It's clearly doing well. #1 bestseller on Amazon. And you mentioned before that these questions came from you hearing the same ones over and over again, and at certain conferences and things. It's been an odd year, or longer than a year now, with COVID. But have you still been taking part in some open source discussions and some online conferences?
I have, yeah. One thing that is, there's many positives actually that have come out of the pandemic. Obviously, there's a ton of negatives. I don't mean to say this has not been a terrible, terrible time, but there are some positives. And I think one positive that came out of it is the way that one of my my professional speaker buddies put it. He said, it's really legitimized, virtual conferences or webinars, as we maybe used to call them. It's really legitimized them, because now they're legitimate ways of sharing ideas and sharing content. Certainly participating in podcasts like yours. This has been an important part of how I've been wanting to spend my time, because I can't be physically in a room with people or physically on a stage. So, it's like anything. I mean, that's actually even a great metaphor for security, right? It's you have to adapt. The world around us changed, and we have to adapt to that change. And I look forward to when live events come back, but there will always be a combination moving forward of live and virtual.
Mm. Yeah, Tom, I know we're missing some of the physical ones, aren't we?
Yeah, it's sad because I really enjoy meeting everyone. And obviously, Ted, as you're saying there that things are changing, I mean, are there any particular areas you think that we should be watching, really? Any sort of current trends that might be going on? Any areas that you think will sort of be brought to the forefront?
Yeah, I feel like I have the answer to the quiz before the quiz happens with that question. Not because I'm like, some oracle or something, but
I was going to say, what are tonight's lottery numbers in the UK, please?
I would share if I had that. No, I am not some oracle, but what I've noticed is that technology trends, they move really slowly. Adoption of shifts in technology. The reality is these technology trends take a long time. So to answer your question, Tom, the answer to it exists in what's happening in the world right now, because it's not like tomorrow the world changes instantly. I mean, it could, but a lot of these trends we're going to keep seeing. The adoption of cloud, the migration to internet connected devices, the Internet of Things, the way that machine learning and artificial intelligence are going to impact all kinds of industries, the adoption of blockchain and cryptocurrencies in particular. These things are already underway, but they're in various stages of like the early stages. And cloud's probably closer to maybe the late majority in terms of adoption. But some of these other ones, it's like, people still don't know how artificial intelligence is going to play out. And so those are the things that I definitely see coming. And, there's going to be security implications for all of them.
Well, that'll keep you busy.
I think so.
Look, I think that's a cool note to end on. Ted, thank you so much for joining us today. Wish you all the best with the book and, of course, everything else in your world. No doubt a future ahead, which for you is going to be both very exciting and very busy as well.
Yeah, thank you guys for having me. And if anybody listening to this is, if this triggered any questions, or you wanted to get a hold of me or figure out how to follow me on social media or reach out, or if you had security testing needs yourself, like anything you need, you just went to hackablebook.com. All the ideas are there. My contact info's there, and I respond to pretty much everybody who reaches out. So.
Excellent. Thanks very much, and thank you to Tom as well for helping us out today.
No problem.